At the fashion gala, I showed up dressed in full glamour, but I went alone. Reporters quickly swarmed me with questions, asking curiously, "Miss Miller, isn't Mr. Dawson accompanying you tonight?" Before I could respond, a wave of noise came from the distance. Following the sound, I looked up and saw Michael Dawson stepping out of his car, holding hands intimately with the woman beside him. The crowd erupted in shock. After all, this was the first time in 7 years he had shown up with a different woman. For years, I had always been the one by his side. Now it was Claire Bai, a young starlet famous for her sweet and innocent image. Some entertainment reporters had once compared our looks and found that Claire and I bore a certain resemblance. Michael appearing with her tonight felt exactly like one of those stories where the stand-in defeats the original and rises to take her place. Reporters rushed forward to surround them. I lifted my head and met Michael's gaze. His eyes were cold and indifferent. I nodded politely, then turned as if nothing had happened and continued walking down the red carpet. My agent Lucy leaned in and whispered, "No wonder Claire's been snatching up all your fashion endorsements." I was wondering who was backing her. "Turns out it's Michael Dawson. Did you two have another fight?" I shook my head. "No, we broke up." Lucy didn't even look surprised. She sighed and said, "Sweetie, it's only halfway through the year, and you've already broken up 3 times. Every single time, Michael swallows his pride and chases after you. Can't you just give in once? If you don't, that little vixen Claire might really steal him away." Yeah, in everyone's eyes, I was the one constantly throwing tantrums, while Michael was always the one coaxing me back. As for Claire, she was just someone he used to spite me. As long as I gave in, everyone thought Michael would come right back to me. But I knew better. This wasn't about throwing a fit. It was a statement. He was telling me, "If you won't give me what I want, there are plenty of others who will." I clenched my hands, the diamonds on the hem of my dress digging into my skin, sharp and painful, but that pain made me more clear-headed. "We're not getting back together." I said it with certainty. This time, it's really over between me and Michael Dawson. We had been together for 7 years, breaking up and getting back together more than 20 times. I was always the one who initiated the breakup, and he was always the one who made up. He was the heir to the Dawson family, always surrounded by beautiful women, yet he was willing to lower his pride again and again, just to make me happy, to bring me back. If I ever said I missed him, he would fly across the country just to hold me in his arms. People often told me not to be so dramatic, that I shouldn't pick fights over random tabloid gossip. "Can't you see how much he loves you?" they'd say. "Why keep breaking up and hurting each other?" I knew they had a point, but I just couldn't control my emotions. There were so many nights I cried until dawn, and he would always hold me tightly, whispering in his deep voice, "How is that being dramatic? Yanyan just loves me too much. She just feels insecure. I want to comfort her." I would look up at him, my eyes red from crying, and ask, "For a lifetime?" And he would reply without hesitation, "For a lifetime." We were so young then. Love burned so fiercely, so intensely. We really believed that simply saying forever meant it would be real. But now, thinking back, it was just wishful thinking. The realization left a bitter taste in my mouth. Lucy asked me why we broke up this time. I paused, blinking slowly, before letting my gaze fall on the 2 people clinging to each other not far away. My voice was quiet. "He's getting married. He wants me to be his mistress." Lucy froze. I looked away, down the wine in my glass. No one noticed how red my eyes were at the corners. I told him I wasn't willing. Lucy's expression turned pale. "That's insane," she muttered. "Yeah," I said. "Insane. But Michael doesn't think so." When he said it, he even sounded like it was perfectly reasonable. "Yanyan, I've already spoken with Zoe," he said. "Our marriage is just for show. We won't interfere in each other's private lives. We can still be together." Zoe Carter, heiress of the Carter Group and the bride chosen by the Dawson family for a political marriage. I found out about their potential engagement by accident, through one of Michael's assistants. I had only wanted an explanation. I thought he would deny it. I never imagined he would drop such a bombshell instead. How ridiculous, to be with someone for 7 years, only to find out that my boyfriend is getting married, and he wants me to be his mistress. I stared at the man in front of me. My heart skipped a beat without warning, then began pounding violently in my chest. The pressure rose to my nose, and I couldn't stop the sting that welled up. For a moment, I didn't know whether I should be angry at his insult or heartbroken over the loss. But Michael just looked at me, calm and sure, as if he truly believed I would agree. Because I loved him that much. But all I wanted to ask was, Michael, were you ever planning to tell me you were getting married? He frowned slightly, confusion flickering in his eyes. So what if I am? I love you. That should be enough, right? Yan, this kind of thing is common in our world. It's not like you haven't seen it before. Of course I had. In the 7 years we were together, he brought me to every kind of industry event imaginable. I had seen couples who seemed loving in front of the cameras but were emotionally distant in private. I had seen marriages of convenience, where each partner led separate lives behind closed doors. But I never thought it would happen to us. We loved each other so deeply. I was sure we would get married, have kids, and grow old together. I truly believed in that. But I was wrong. Michael never planned to marry me. All along, I was just fooling myself. I pulled my hand back from his grip, my voice clear and firm with every word. But I don't want to be your secret mistress for the rest of my life. Michael frowned again but still tried to explain patiently. Yan, you're not my mistress. You're my real wife. And what about Zoe? I asked. He couldn't answer. He couldn't deny Zoe's identity, yet he still couldn't understand why I cared so much about her existence. Maybe we were never on the same path from the beginning. I lowered my eyes, lashes damp, staring at him through tear-rimmed lids. I don't want to be the kind of woman who's hidden in the shadows. Yan, he said as if wounded, don't you want to be with me? We promised forever. You said you loved me. I do love you. I looked up at him, my gaze steady and resolute. But Michael, I won't lose my self-respect just because I love you. At that moment, the first snowflakes began to fall. Soon, everything outside was covered in white. It's snowing, I murmured, standing and walking over to the floor-to-ceiling window. I said softly, I remember the last time it snowed. You and I were curled up on the couch under one blanket, watching the story of Minglin. I watched as Minglin married Gu Tingye, wearing her phoenix coronet and red wedding robes, and I turned to you and asked if marrying you would also count as marrying up. You just laughed at the time. Looking back now, were you secretly mocking me for dreaming such a ridiculous dream? Who was I, really? Just a minor actress. What right did I have to think I could marry the heir to the Dawson family? As I spoke, tears began to fall. I lifted my hand to wipe them away, trying to erase the traces of my heartbreak. I looked pathetic, and I hated looking pathetic. But the more I wiped, the more the tears came, and my chest ached with 1,000 tiny pains. Michael spoke again, his voice low and hard to decipher. I never thought that. Maybe, I said, my lips curling into a bitter smile. But did you ever think about marrying me? Michael opened his mouth slightly, as if to answer, but said nothing. And in that silence I had my answer. No. He never did. He never once thought about marrying me. Even though I'd prepared myself for this, hearing the truth still hurt more than I imagined. I blinked, staring at him, my voice filled with quiet anguish. A lot of people say I'm always fighting with you, always making a scene. They don't know why. But you and I, we know. I took a deep breath. It's because I told you. I wanted to get married. You said you didn't want to get married yet, that you were focused on your career, that you needed to handle your family first. I understood. That's why I forgave you again and again. But if you had told me from the beginning that you never intended to marry me, why did I bother trying to win your parents over? Why did I waste so many years staying by your side? I was so foolish. People always say that love blinds your heart and your eyes. I used to scoff at that, but now, I believe it. How else could I have been fooled by the same clumsy excuses for 7 years? How else could I have spent all those days and nights with someone and never seeing what he truly wanted? How else could I still feel heartbroken for someone who lied to me? Michael Dawson, let's break up. I finally said the words, serious and resolute. In that moment, it felt like a weight lifted from my chest and shoulders. I could breathe again. But Michael just stared at me. The tenderness disappeared from his eyes, replaced by something deeper, colder. He said each word clearly and heavily. Caitlin, You're going to regret this." At the time, I didn't understand what he meant. But soon after, I started getting termination notices. Contracts were canceled, endorsements withdrawn. Some were willing to pay hefty breach penalties just to cut ties with me. And every one of them signed with Claire By instead. That was when I understood Michael was sending me a message. Through his actions, he was saying, "See? You didn't want to be my mistress? Well, plenty of women do." That night, the gala reached its climax when a special guest arrived, Director Lewis, the internationally acclaimed filmmaker who had just returned to the country. Lucy leaned in beside me and whispered excitedly, "Even Director Lewis is here. He's casting for the lead role in his new film. Didn't you always admire his work? I've heard he really likes you too. You better go for it this time." "Okay." I took a deep breath, champagne in hand, and started walking toward Director Lewis. But just as I approached, I saw Michael holding Claire's hand as he walked right up to him. "Director Lewis," Michael said. "This is Claire By, the actress I told you about." Claire glanced at me out of the corner of her eye, brimming with smugness. With Michael making the introduction, Director Lewis immediately began chatting with her about the film's plot. I pressed my lips together, unsure for a moment, but I didn't want to give up just yet, so I stepped forward. "Director Lewis, hello, I'm..." Before I could finish, Michael cut in, speaking casually. "She's my former lover." Lover. The word rolled off his tongue with a deliberate hint of innuendo. My heart skipped a beat. I turned to look at him, only to meet his taunting gaze. He did it on purpose. He knew how much I hated that word, yet he still pinned it on me in front of everyone. Looking away, he added coolly, "Her acting's average at best." Just like that, 4 simple words wiped out 10 years of my hard work. Director Lewis didn't spare me another glance. At that moment, I knew the opportunity I had waited years for was gone. Something hollowed out inside me, something I couldn't hold on to no matter how hard I tried. I turned and walked away. But around the corner backstage, I ran into Michael again. He was leaning against the wall, head tilted slightly as he looked at me, the lights above casting colors in his eyes, yet none of them were warm. "Caitlin," he asked, "do you regret it? After losing so much since leaving me, do you regret it? Come back to me," he continued. "Everything you want can still be yours." I looked up at him, my eyes calm, even gentle, but without a trace of regret. I smiled faintly. "Michael, I've never regretted it. When I say I'm done, I mean it." Because of Michael's interference, all my endorsements and appearances were canceled. But in a strange way, it gave me a rare break. I'd been in this industry for 10 years, always running, always chasing. For the first time, I had nothing to do. I didn't even know how to spend my time. While cleaning my apartment one day, I stumbled upon a shirt tucked away in my closet. There was a cufflink embedded in the sleeve, black crystal, with a tiny letter D etched in the center. I stared at it for a moment, trying to remember when he had left this shirt behind, but I couldn't recall. I had planned to throw it out, but I remembered Michael once mentioned how valuable the cufflinks were. So instead, I set it aside. I didn't want to owe him anything, not even a shirt. I contacted his assistant and asked him to come retrieve it. On the phone, his assistant spoke in a low voice. "Miss Miller, Mr. Dawson has been mentioning you a lot lately. He still loves you. But the Dawson family is very strict about the arranged marriage. That's why Mr. Dawson resorted to such a desperate solution. Making you his mistress. That was never his intention." He chose his words carefully, but couldn't hide the dismissive tone underneath. To them, being a mistress, being the other woman, was never shameful. It was just how things worked. I responded with a flat, "Got it." After a moment of silence, his assistant carefully asked, "Miss Miller, I'm glad you understand. When will you be back? I can come pick you up." I cut him off. "I'm not going back. It ended between us a long time ago. I already said I don't like seeing myself fall apart, and I never regret my decisions." The moment I finished speaking, I heard a loud crash on the other end of the call, like something heavy hitting the floor. Then came Michael's hoarse, low voice. "Then get out of my life. Get out and stay gone." So he had been there all along, still so immature. Every time he screwed up, he'd send his assistant to test my reaction. But this time, I wasn't going to soften. I ended the call. I stared at the shirt now stuffed in a trash bag, and, out of nowhere, I felt the urge to go back to my hometown. I missed my mom and dad. I could get there tonight. On the high-speed train, I called my mom. She was overjoyed and quickly called for my dad. Laughing, she said, "Sweetie, be careful on the way, okay? Watch your wallet. We'll be waiting for you at the station." I smiled helplessly. I was already 32, had survived 10 years of ups and downs in the entertainment industry, yet Mom still reminded me to guard my wallet, just like she did when I first left home for college over a decade ago. As soon as I stepped off the train, I saw them standing by the station entrance, craning their necks to spot me. I walked over, and Mom immediately grabbed my hand, looking me over head to toe, while Dad took my suitcase, glanced around behind me, and asked, "Yan Yan, you came back alone? Where's Michael?" I stiffened. Before I could respond, Mom smacked Dad lightly on the arm with mock irritation. "Michael probably had work, obviously. Your daughter's home? You're still thinking about someone else? What kind of father are you?" Yes, my bad," Dad said quickly with a sheepish smile. "I made Yan Yan's favorite spicy chicken tonight. It's my peace offering." They both looked at me with a trace of worry in their eyes. I smiled and nodded earnestly. When we got home, Dad went to the kitchen to finish preparing dinner, and Mom helped me unpack. Though truthfully, my room was already neat and clean. I'd been away for years, but parents always worry that their children's growth will leave them behind, so they express their longing through small things, like tidying the room again and again, sitting inside just to feel close to their child's presence. Mom seemed like she wanted to say something several times, and finally she asked softly, "Yan Yan, did you and Michael have a fight? Did he upset you again?" Lucy always said I was the one causing drama in my relationship with Michael. But Mom was different. She always assumed it must have been Michael's fault. I didn't want to make her worry about my love life, so I just said, "We broke up." But then Mom stepped closer, studied my face carefully, and pulled me into her arms. Her voice was gentle. "You've been hurt, haven't you?" I froze. I had been hurt, deeply, when I found out that the man I'd loved for 7 years had never once considered marrying me. I didn't cry when my endorsements and resources were taken away. I didn't cry when people cornered me, asking if I regretted anything, because I knew crying wouldn't help. It would only invite ridicule, gossip, and scorn. But in this moment, resting in my mother's warm and gentle embrace, the tears I had held back for so long finally broke free. I just kept thinking, maybe I was wrong from the very beginning. I shouldn't have accepted Michael Dawson's confession. I shouldn't have gotten together with him. I shouldn't have stayed, even after realizing the first time that he didn't want marriage. Shouldn't have softened just because of his countless excuses. Maybe I really did make a mistake, but Mom gently wiped away my tears and said softly, "Yan Yan, even fairies face trials when they descend to earth. Maybe Michael was just one chapter in your story. And our Yan Yan, she made it through that chapter. It took 7 years. But it's over now. That means I should be happy for you." She smiled at me, eyes full of unwavering belief. "Because I know, from now on, everything in your life will go smoothly." "Really?" I looked up at her. She didn't hesitate for a second. "Of course." And in that instant, the unease I'd carried for so long seemed to settle and grow quiet. My heart finally landed, steady and still. Mom and Dad would always be my support. I could walk any path with courage, because if I ever got tired, I could come home. My mother's arms would always be open. That night, lying in bed, Mom tucked me in. Through my hazy sleep, I saw the golden sunset casting its glow across her face, painting her features with softness. "Mom," I mumbled, "tomorrow I want to go watch the sunrise." She gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and nodded. "Okay, your dad and I will go with you." "Both of you?" "Of course," she smiled. "We're both here." That made me feel at peace. The next morning I woke to find Mom and Dad already dressed and ready. We headed to Chixia Mountain, a range of rolling peaks still cloaked in early morning mist. The sun had not yet risen. A thin layer of fog floated across the trails, and only a few distant figures could be seen here and there. As we strolled along the path, the scent of the woods filled each breath I took, washing away the heaviness in my chest. Then from behind us, a familiar voice called out with excitement, "Miss Miller." "Mr. and Mrs. Miller." We turned around to see a man in a black tracksuit jogging toward us. His features were clean and striking, and the sweat on his forehead only made him look more youthful. His smile lit up as he looked at my parents. "Do you remember me?" They both froze for a second, then burst into delighted smiles. Zuo, didn't you go abroad? When did you come back?" The man laughed. "The research project I was working on wrapped up, so I figured I'd come home for a break." Mom gently nudged me forward. "Zuo, do you remember Yanyan? You two used to play together all the time when you were little." His smile grew even warmer as he leaned in slightly. "Caitlin Miller, do you remember me?" I blinked at him and smiled. "Of course I do." This was Julian Yu, my childhood friend. We had grown up together. Back in those days, we lived in the same alley and sat next to each other in school. His parents were always busy with business and often forgot to pick him up, while my parents, both elementary school teachers, had hearts soft enough for every child. They used to bring him home with me for dinner, for games, for everything. We were inseparable. So much so that other kids would tease me, calling me his child bride. Julian would punch anyone who dared say that. I remember one afternoon, I was dabbing ointment on his scraped-up hand and whispered, "You shouldn't fight because of them. It's not worth it." But Julian just flicked my forehead and said, "I wasn't fighting because of them. I was fighting for you." I stared at him in shock. He looked right back at me, sighed, and gently rubbed the spot he'd just flicked. His touch was soft, and though his voice still carried the innocent tone of childhood, it was filled with warmth. "Caitlin Miller," he said. "You're a girl," Julian had told me once. "You can't let people talk about you behind your back. But as long as I'm here, don't be afraid." Later, he followed his parents overseas. In the beginning, we still kept in touch, sharing the funny little moments from our lives over the phone. But at some point, those calls stopped and we lost contact until now. Over the past few years, I had grown tired of keeping up. I couldn't match my parents' energy as they marched briskly up the mountain path. By the end, I was alone, lagging far behind, except for Julian. He didn't say anything, and neither did I. We simply walked in silence, side by side. Then he suddenly stopped and turned toward me. "Yanyan, this is for you." He handed me a plum blossom, dewdrops still clinging to its petals, making it look even more delicate and vibrant. I didn't even notice when he picked it. I asked softly, "Why are you giving me a flower out of nowhere?" Julian smiled gently. "No reason, just hoping everything in your life goes smoothly." I blinked at him, a little taken aback. When I looked up, I realized that the boy I remembered, the one with the youthful face, had long since grown into a man, upright and calm like a pine tree. The morning light seemed to favor him, filtering through the leaves and casting a golden glow over his shoulders, like it was crowning him with radiance. His eyes curved slightly, glinting with laughter, warm and full of affection. He was breathtaking in a way that made it hard to look away. I accepted the flower with a soft laugh. "Thank you." Just then, the sun broke over the horizon, spilling golden light across the mountain in a brilliant blaze. My mom waved at us, calling out, "Julian, come on. Let's take a picture together." We laughed and walked up to join her. The shutter clicked. Time froze in that perfect moment. My face relaxed in a gentle smile, the road ahead stretching forward, my family and friends beside me, and the dazzling sunrise glowing behind me. From that day on, I knew my life was starting over. After that reunion, I realized Julian's family never sold the old house at the end of the alley. We became neighbors again. When we had free time, we'd go hiking together or grab a drink. He never asked how I'd been all these years, and I never brought it up either. Until one day, returning from an art exhibit, I spotted a familiar car parked at the entrance of the alley. I walked a little closer, and sure enough, it was Michael. He was leaning against the hood, brows furrowed, cigarette butts scattered at his feet. The moment he saw me, he rushed to stomp out his cigarette and took a step toward me. But then he noticed Julian walking beside me, and he stopped. "Yanyan," he called, his voice shaking a little, "come here." I looked at him without a word, my face completely blank. Then I turned away and walked right past him. Michael froze. He had never imagined I would be so indifferent toward him. The words he had prepared got stuck in his throat, and he couldn't say a single thing. I had planned to just walk away. But when I noticed several neighbors watching curiously, I stopped in front of him and said flatly, Do you need something? His eyes lit up, but before he could say anything, a car stuck at the mouth of the alley blared its horn several times. I looked back at him and said calmly, "If not, please leave. Your car's blocking the entrance. It's making it hard for people to get in and out." My tone was distant and polite, like I was speaking to a stranger. Michael's expression shifted. There was a hint of helplessness in his eyes. "Yanyan, it's been so long. Why are you still angry? What do I have to do for you to come back with me?" He took a step closer. "I've really missed you these past few months. Without you, the house feels so empty, so cold." He reached out, trying to hold my hand, but I pulled away. Even now, he still didn't get it. He still thought I was just throwing a tantrum, that if he lowered his head and coaxed me like before, I would soften, just like all the other times over the past 7 years. But not this time. I wasn't going back. Tired of Michael Dawson's relentless pursuit, I led him to a quiet corner away from everyone. Turning to face him, I looked at the man in front of me and spoke gently. "Michael, your family wants you to marry Zoe Carter, and you expect me to be your mistress. You think that's perfectly reasonable. But what if my family needed me to get married too? Would you be willing to be my secret lover?" Michael froze. His expression darkened. "You wouldn't be willing, would you?" I said calmly. "So why is it fair that you get to marry and I don't? Why is it only fair when things go your way?" The empty alley echoed with my steady voice, and slowly, Michael's face paled. He looked at me, then looked past me at Julian, who was still waiting quietly at the entrance of the alley. For the first time, the unwavering confidence in his eyes began to crack. He misunderstood, but I didn't want to explain. I didn't owe him that anymore. When I spoke again, there was a trace of irony in my voice. "Michael, from beginning to end, you never saw us as equals, did you? You come from a wealthy family. You needed a political marriage to protect your business. And me? I come from an ordinary background. I couldn't help your career, but I could be your mistress. You always said you loved me, but deep down, you never respected me. You asked me if I regret it." I continued, my tone softening slightly. "I really don't." I let out a quiet sigh. My eyes carried a tinge of sorrow, because once upon a time we truly did love each other. And I didn't want the miserable way we ended to taint the part of me that once chose to love him. Back then, we were both too young. We thought love was forever. But we forgot. People change. The man I loved was the college boy who sang love songs loudly on the field just to get my attention. The one who was willing to give up everything for me. The one who worked hard to fight for the freedom to marry for love. Not this man who was now choosing ambition over me. Maybe, for him, this choice wasn't wrong, but I didn't like him anymore. And that's why I don't regret anything. Maybe Mom was right. Maybe Michael was just a chapter in my story. I was unlucky enough to spend my best 7 years caught up in that chapter. But I was lucky enough to know that my life is far more than just 7 years. I allow myself to feel sad, to be heartbroken, but I will never stay stuck in place. I have ambition, and my ambition doesn't allow me to stop. "So, Michael," I said quietly, "we're really over." I smiled then, just like I used to. No, this isn't how it's supposed to go," he stammered, like something inside him had shattered. He shouted, his fists trembling from how tightly he clenched them, eyes red and brimming with tears. "Caitlin, I don't want to lose you." But I looked at him and felt nothing. I even took a step back, just in case he lost control and lashed out, even though I knew he wouldn't. And it was in that moment that I knew for sure I really didn't love him anymore. Because every emotion he showed only made me feel weary. I stood there, unmoved, coldly watching, and then I turned to leave. I brushed past him. Michael lifted his hand as if to stop me, but in the end, he didn't do anything. As I neared the corner of the alley, I turned around one last time. Michael was still standing there, stubbornly staring at me. His shoulders were slightly hunched, making him look vulnerable and pitiful. He opened his mouth and finally asked me, "Caitlin, did I really mess everything up?" I didn't answer him. I didn't even turn around, and that in itself was my answer. On the way home, the distance was short, but both Julian and I instinctively slowed our pace. I was going to suggest that he head back first. I wanted to be alone for a while, to let the wind clear my thoughts. But instead, he quietly sat beside me. He didn't ask anything, and I didn't feel like talking. We stayed that way until stars appeared in the sky and the cool night breeze finally dried my tears. Julian handed me a tissue. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft and cautious. "Caitlin, did he hurt you?" I froze. Those words, I'd heard them before. My mom had asked me the same thing. By now, there was nothing left to hide. I let out a soft sigh, smiled bitterly, and said, "I was with him for 7 years. And now, he's getting married, asked me to be his mistress." It sounds ridiculous just saying it out loud. Sometimes I genuinely wondered if maybe I wasn't meant for marriage. Otherwise, how could Michael Dawson be with me for 7 years and never once consider marrying me? Julian paused, then suddenly stood and crouched in front of me. He looked up at my red, swollen eyes, wanting to say something, but all that came out was a muttered curse. "What an asshole," he said, then added, "A blind asshole." Julian had always been handsome and easygoing, with a smile that warmed everyone around him. Most of the time he felt like a calm, thoughtful scholar. But in this moment, seeing his exasperated face and hearing him swear, it was oddly out of character and oddly endearing. I couldn't help but laugh and nodded. "Yeah, blind." Seeing me smile, Julian's anger softened and he laughed too. "So, are you going back?" I nodded. "Of course. My ambition won't let me stay where I am. My love life might be a mess. Michael might have tried to destroy my career just to force me back to his side, but he'd misjudged me. I've never been the kind of woman who turns back after hitting a wall. Even if I bleed from the collision, I'll never surrender. I won't stop moving forward." Julian looked at me for a long, long time. Then he stood, held out his hand, and said, "Good, that's the Caitlin Miller I know, strong and unyielding." And finally, he added with a smile, "Then I hope everything from here on goes smoothly for you." The wind stirred the chimes on the window nearby, their soft jingling clear and sweet. I looked up at him and gave him a radiant smile. "To us," I said. A month later, on the day of another sunset, with golden light spilling across the sky, Julian proposed to me. It was sudden. He dropped to one knee, pulled out a diamond ring, and with trembling voice confessed everything. "Yanyan," he said, "I know this might feel unexpected, but I've thought about this over and over, thousands of times. I'm not trying to pressure you into anything. I wanted to tell you this way. You're not some unloved girl, and you're not someone who isn't meant for marriage. The people who didn't see your worth, they were the ones who weren't good enough for you." My heart skipped a beat. I suddenly remembered what I'd said last month, just a passing complaint, really. I had said, maybe I'm just not the kind of person people marry. And now, standing here, he gave me his answer. He told me I was better than anyone. He said, "Caitlin, don't doubt yourself." He said he liked me. He said he had never stopped thinking about me. And then he told me the real reason he came back. It wasn't a vacation. It was because he heard I had broken up with Michael Dawson. He dropped everything, his research, his work, and rushed back. "I just thought," he said gently, "that maybe you'd need someone to be there for you." Looking back now, it turns out I had underestimated myself. Julian said softly, a little shy, but also a little proud. "Caitlin figured things out all on her own." I couldn't help but laugh until tears unexpectedly slipped down my face. I had imagined so many different scenarios for a proposal over the years, grand ones, romantic ones. But in the end, it was this, quiet, simple, and deeply moving. My parents stood nearby, tears in their eyes as they smiled at me. They loved me, so they would never pressure me into a decision. I reached out and took the ring from Julian. In that moment, it wasn't a symbol of constraint, it was a rare and precious gift. A gift filled with youthful sincerity. As the last tear fell, I whispered, "I think I'd really like to consider it." 2 weeks later, I received a call from Lucy. She informed me I had been nominated for Best Actress at the film festival. I needed to attend. I arrived early. While getting ready, the makeup artist I'd worked with many times began to chat idly, sharing the latest gossip. The biggest topic, of course, was Michael Dawson and Claire Bai. "I heard the Dawson family officially announced the arranged marriage with the Carter family," she whispered. "But Michael refused. There was a huge scene a few days ago." "Is it true he actually wants to marry Claire?" she added. "She's everywhere lately, stealing opportunities from everyone. And Michael still spoils her like crazy. He's not worried it'll backfire?" She paused, then sighed. "Honestly, Caitlin, You're lucky to have escaped that mess. I always thought someone like Michael wasn't our kind of people. His parents were in a political marriage too, you know? And now his dad's illegitimate son just showed up. He's almost the same age as Michael. That kind of family chaos. It's not something we'd ever be able to accept. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. Flawless makeup, red lips, bright eyes, and a soft curve to my mouth that made me look radiant. Across the room, I noticed a familiar figure. It was Michael, standing stiffly. The shadows beneath his eyes were deep and purple with fatigue. Claire was clinging to his arm, smiling sweetly, full of life. But his eyes were fixed on me, through the mirror, not blinking. I was the one who looked away first. My voice was clear, light, and distant. Yeah, I couldn't accept it, so I gave him up. Time to head in. The curtain was drawn. I lifted the hem of my dress and walked into the venue. Just before the lights went down, I turned back and pulled the ring from my purse. After a moment of thought, I slid it onto my ring finger. In the end, the Best Actress award wasn't mine. It went to Claire. She stood on stage, delivering her acceptance speech, glowing under the spotlight. At that moment, she really did look like life's biggest winner. Just 2 years into her career, she'd won the award I'd been chasing for 10. Luxury endorsements lined up behind her, and she had the Dawson family's golden boy by her side. How could she not be the winner? I let out a quiet sigh and exchanged a wry look with the director beside me. Then I stood and quietly left the room. Backstage, I ran into Michael again. He was on the phone, voice low and furious. How could it be Claire? Didn't I tell you to stay out of tonight's awards? Someone said something on the other end. Michael went silent and then hung up without a word. He stormed into the banquet hall, grabbed Claire by the wrist, and dragged her to the back. Michael, what are you doing? Claire protested, but Michael stared at her coldly, voice like ice. It was you, wasn't it? Claire panicked. No, it wasn't me. I earned that award. Caitlin's acting is average at best. How could she possibly deserve it? Before she could finish, Michael grabbed her by the neck, his voice dangerously low. From now on, I don't want to hear a single bad word about Caitlin come out of your mouth. You're not worthy. He stared at her hard. Caitlin has been in this industry for 10 years. She's earned more awards than you can count. I was the one who forced her endorsements to be terminated. Do you know how unwilling those brands were to work with you afterward? Without me, those endorsements would have been lining up to work with her instead of you. You'll never match his fame or his talent in your entire life. Who do you think you are, daring to judge him? I froze. I never realized that, in Michael Dawson's heart, he held me in such low regard. But wasn't it him who stood before the press and called me his mistress? Wasn't it him who discredited my acting skills in public? He had always been like this, living by double standards. I let out a cold laugh, then quietly turned and walked away from the farce. At the exit, I was immediately surrounded by reporters who had clearly been waiting. Some offered comfort, others were just there for the spectacle, and of course, a few were eager to stir the pot. Miss Miller, do you think losing Best Actress has anything to do with Mr. Dawson? Do you regret breaking up with him now? Facing the cameras, I smiled calmly and held up my hand, revealing the diamond ring on my finger. I'm getting married. As soon as the words left my mouth, the man not far from me visibly faltered. His eyes turned red, and his face went pale as he stared at me in shock. He started walking toward me in big strides, but Claire grabbed his arm and held him back. I looked at them, then turned and walked through the crowd, leaving the banquet behind. Once inside the car, Lucy gave me a complicated look. She wanted to say something, but held it in. I didn't feel like explaining anything. Then my phone rang. I answered, and a familiar voice came through. Yan, I heard you're getting married. He must have been watching the live stream. There was no other way he could have found out that fast. I smiled. Yeah. With who? He asked, equal parts hopeful and cautious. I was silent for a long time, so long that only the sound of our breathing filled the space between us. Then I said softly, Maybe it's you. Julian let out a startled gasp. I'm coming back. I have to come back. But a second later, an angry voice shouted from his end of the line. Get your ass back here, you little brat. You've already used up 3 years' worth of vacation. It was his advisor. Listening to the chaos on the other end of the phone, I finally felt the tight knot in my chest slowly unwind. Everything felt right. The last time I saw Michael Dawson was on set. Claire had probably upset him and he stopped supporting her. That signal alone was enough to stir up all the resentment from those whose resources she had taken. Everything turned back on her tenfold. Poetic, really. But I had no energy to care about someone else's fate. I was busy comforting Julian, who couldn't come back just yet, urging him to focus on his research. Busy shooting new films and commercials. Oh, and director Lou reached out to me again. Despite how Michael had discredited my acting in public, which turned director Lou away from me at the time, I still went to the audition. And I passed, smoothly. Just like Michael had once said, I'd been in this industry for 10 years. My talent and professionalism were beyond doubt. Director Lou apologized for having underestimated me before. I shook my head and said I didn't mind. Before I left, he added, actually, even though Mr. Dawson recommended Claire, he never actually let her attend the audition. Later, he told me, this project, I'll only invest if Caitlin stars in it. But to be honest, even without his backing, once the other investors knew you were cast as the lead, none of them would have hesitated to support the film. Your acting speaks for itself. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't known that part of the story, but it didn't matter anymore. I simply smiled and said, thank you. When I left the set, it was already past midnight. The sky was still dark, and to my surprise, it was snowing again. Winter had returned. It felt like I had a strange connection with snow. I met Michael on the first snowfall of the year, and 7 years later, we said our final goodbye under another blanket of snow, as if, from the very beginning, it had already foretold our ending. Cold and quiet, burying everything that had once been beautiful. I stood quietly at the entrance, waiting for my car. Just then, I heard a trembling voice behind me. Caitlin. I turned. It was Michael. He stepped up beside me and stood there in silence for a long time before finally speaking in a low, hoarse voice. I've done a lot of thinking lately, and I realized I was really wrong. I turned to look at him, only to see how disheveled he was. The shadows under his eyes were deep, his gaze bloodshot and tired. He hadn't even shaved, his jaw covered in rough stubble. There was a faint smell of alcohol clinging to his clothes. He looked absolutely wrecked. I subtly shifted half a step away. Michael noticed, and his face turned pale. But he gave a bitter smile. When you were with me, you never asked for anything. I used to think you just couldn't leave me. Why else would you come back every time, as long as I said a few soft words? He paused, eyes glistening. I forgot. You came back because you loved me. And I crushed that love. His voice caught at the end. Caitlin, he whispered, I'm sorry. He added, if I could do it all over again, I wouldn't let you go. His eyes held a fragile kind of hope, like someone holding their breath, praying the answer will be different this time. But I had to be the one to shatter that illusion, fragile as a soap bubble. I looked at him and said gently, if we could go back. Michael, I hope that when you first meet me, you'll pretend not to know me. His expression went blank. Then a tear slipped down his cheek, falling to the ground and instantly turning to ice. I looked at him and smiled faintly. I don't want to be entangled with you anymore. A simple sentence, but it seemed to break something inside him completely. He stood there, eyes bloodshot, and nodded once. When I got in the car, I glanced back. Michael was still standing in place, watching me just like he did the first time I told him we were over. But just like every time before, I never once looked back. Later, as I got out of the car and walked toward my building, I suddenly saw a familiar figure waiting in the distance. My heart skipped. I ran toward him, fast, without hesitation, and he caught me in his arms. At that moment, the sun rose. Warm golden light spilled across the snow-covered ground, melting the chill and washing away the shadows of the night. I'm back, Caitlin, Julian said softly. I looked into the distance. The sunlight was dazzling. Snowflakes drifted down from the sky, but I knew that from this winter on I would never feel cold again, because I had caught the rising sun.